When it comes to this 25-hour period, we are obligated to eat 3 meals. So that's it. That is our bare bones Shabbat menu and the schedule of the meals. So when you go to the wine store that has a kosher section, you're probably going to see a selection of wines. When it comes to kosher wine, you have 2 different kinds. Here it says, according to the postscript, 2 loaves should be prepared at each of the 3 Shabbat meals, and this is what I use every week. So I just wanted to show you, this is the Shabbat timer that I use. In this video, I'm going to be going over how to prepare a menu for Shabbat. And if you have ever found yourself asking questions like, what kind of food should I make for Shabbat? Can it be hot food, cold food? How do you reheat food? Fish, challah, how many challah do I need? What kind of wine do I buy? And questions like that, then this video is hopefully going to answer some of those questions for you. This video is really geared toward all of the new Shabbat keepers out there. Maybe you're Bala Tshuva, maybe your family didn't raise you with Shabbat, maybe you're a convert like me and you're just starting out, so you can use a little guidance. So that's the reason I wanted to create this video, is to help all of you guys out. And this is a video that I wished I would have had when I was just starting to keep Shabbat. So first question that I want to answer is, what is Shabbat? Shabbat is the 4th commandment of the 10 commandments that was given to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai. And the Jewish people were commanded to remember the Shabbat and to keep it holy. So Shabbat is a day of complete cessation from work, and we don't cook, we don't drive, we don't use electronics. And I'll put a link in the description box below the video so you can go and read more if you'd like just more general information on what Shabbat is. So Shabbat begins on Friday at sunset and it goes until Saturday evening. And the exact times for when Shabbat starts and ends is different depending on where you are in the world. So if you'd like to know the Shabbat start and end times for where you live, you can just Google Shabbat times or Shabbat candle lighting times and your city, and Google should be able to help you out with that. So when it comes to this 25-hour period, we are obligated to eat 3 meals during Shabbat proper, and then on Motzei Shabbat is Saturday evening after Shabbat is ended, and during Motzei Shabbat we are obligated to eat 1 meal. So that is 4 meals in total, although the 4th meal tends to be very small. So it's 3 big meals, 1 Friday night, and 2 during the day of Shabbat day. And then the 4th meal, which is following the Havdalah ceremony after Shabbat has ended. Okay, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 meals, and then Havdalah is in between. So the first meal is going to be on Friday night. Second meal is going to be on Shabbat morning. The 3rd meal is going to be Shabbat afternoon. Then you're going to have Havdalah in the evening after Shabbat is done. So it becomes Motzei Shabbat after Shabbat is done, so you do the Havdalah ceremony. And then the 4th meal is Motzei Shabbat. Okay. So on the Friday night meal as well as the Shabbat morning meal, you're going to have the Kiddush ceremony. Kiddush. There and there. You do not have Kiddush on Shabbat afternoon, but you still do have wine. And you also have wine for the Havdalah. And you do not need wine for Motzei Shabbat, but you do need challah. So we'll just write that down. Kosher wine. And I'm going to be talking about what is kosher wine. You have 2 different types of kosher wine. You have mavushal versus non-mavushal, and I'm going to be talking about those a little later in the video, but we will just mark that down here. You need kosher wine, you need challah, and then we also need fish and a cooked dish. Okay, so same thing here. We're gonna have kosher wine as well as challah, fish. At this meal you do not have to have the cooked dish though, and we typically do not, because this Shabbat morning meal is like breakfast and we tend to keep it lighter and more breakfasty. So we just have the kiddush with the wine, challah. We usually have smoked salmon for the fish, and then we can make it kind of like just like a lighter breakfast. So here, and then for Shabbat afternoon, there is no Kiddush, but we are still going to have wine, challah, fish, and a cooked dish. And this is minimum. I mean, we always do have salads and additional side dishes and stuff like this. This is just the minimum requirements that I'm writing down here. I will show you what I actually do for a menu a little later on. And then you're going to have the Havdalah ceremony, which uses wine. This is not a meal. This is, you don't eat anything during Havdalah. It's just a ceremony where you say goodbye to Shabbat. So, and then for Motzei Shabbat, again, there's no Kiddush. You also do not have to drink wine, but we do have a small amount of challah. What I do is I usually make small challah that satisfy the minimum requirements, as well as serving something that we didn't serve on Shabbat. So we'll just put that as a different food item. So that's it. That is our bare bones Shabbat menu and the schedule of the meals. And now I'm going to go over this and talk about each one of these items in turn. We're first going to cover off the wine, then we will talk about challah, then fish, and then the cooked dish. So I wanted to go film this at like the wine store, but I realized we actually have quite a variety of wines here that my husband has purchased. So we're just going to take a look at these. I have some that are mavushal and some that are non. So when it comes to kosher wine, you have two different kinds. You have mavushal and non-mavushal. The term mavushal in Hebrew means cooked. So wine that is designated as mavushal means the wine has been cooked. And why do we cook the wine, you might ask? Well, the reason is that once wine has been cooked or boiled before it's bottled means that the wine can then be handled by non-Jews and still retain its kosher status. Wine in Judaism is a very special product. Wine, more than any other food or drink, represents the holiness and separateness of the Jewish people. It is used for the sanctification of Shabbat and Yom Tov and at other Jewish events, such as weddings and Brit Milahs. And in the times of the Bet HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, wine was poured upon the altar together with the sacrifice. So, normally, the production and handling of kosher wine must be done exclusively by Jews. So that means that during the manufacturing process, it has to be done by Jews, and also after the seal of the bottle has been opened. It just makes things a lot simpler to cook the wine and make it mavushal, creating this way around the prohibition. There was this prohibition that wine cannot be manufactured or produced by non-Jews, and it can also not be handled by non-Jews. So by boiling it, we are creating a solution. During the times of the Bet HaMikdash, boiling the wine rendered it unfit to be brought and poured on the altar as an offering. So, mavushal wine, wine that has been cooked, is no longer considered sacramental wine, so it doesn't have the same status as non-mavushal, uncooked, fresh wine. And it's therefore not included in the prohibition against being handled by non-Jews. So, which kind of wine should you buy? This is the question. First of all, it's actually quite difficult to find non-mavushal wine. Most of the wines on the market nowadays are mavushal. They are this cooked wine, but you can't assume. So more than anything, when you go to shop for wine, you want to check the label. That's the number one. We Jews are big label readers. You have to learn to read the label on every product that you're buying. So as someone who's converting, you would definitely want to be getting mavushal wine for yourself. And also if you are giving it as a gift for someone else, especially for maybe a rabbi's family, if you're bringing it to someone's house, if you were invited to go to someone's house, you would want to make sure that the wine that you're bringing is mavushal. You just want to avoid creating any problems that could arise out of the wine being non-mavushal. So I would just say go with mavushal wine, but when you're at the wine store, make sure you're reading the label. Non-mavushal wine is considered on a higher level, so if you were doing Kiddush with your family and you weren't having any guests, then that is actually when we open our non-mavushal wine and we use that to do Kiddush. I will put a link in the description box below so you can read up more on this topic because it is a little bit complicated. So if you have more questions, I would definitely encourage you to go and do some more research on it. So when you go to the wine store that has a kosher section, you're probably going to see a selection of wines, unless it's like a very small town. But here where we live, they do have a fairly good selection, and you can find kosher wines in red, white, and rosé, which that's what this one is, this Baron Herzog White Zinfandel. And one thing I want to note, while the rosé is fine to drink during the meal, you cannot do kiddush on anything other than red wine. So this would only be for drinking during the meal, but not for kiddush. This Barkan, this is a very popular Israeli wine, and I'll show you the back of it here. So you can see here that it has 4 hechshers. And the other thing you're looking for is the mavushal. So you can see right here that this is a mavushal wine. Yes, this one is mavushal. One that is non-mavushal, for example, this Hermon. You can see here that it says the wine is not mavushal. So it has these 2 other hechshers on it, but it has the designation of being non-mavushal. So that's that one. And then for Sephardic in particular, this is what my husband told me. This Dalton wine is really excellent because it has this little label on it here that says kosher limahadrin according to Bet Yosef. For year-round use, including Passover, free from Orla and Shvi'it, Trumot, and Mesorot, have been given under the strict supervision of Rabbi M. Unger from Muncie, New York. So it also has all these different hechshers on it, which is really good. The more hechshers, the better in this case, I guess. So yeah, so the Bet Yosef designation, that is one of the highest kosher supervision, specifically that Sephardic follow. Depending on where you live, you may not have access to much selection, but there's 2 wines that are pretty much universally available. And these are the Magen David Concord as well as the Menashevitz Concord. So those are available at pretty much every liquor store that I've ever been in, I think, unless it's like very remote. They're maybe not the best wines, but they will do in a pinch. The other question that I just wanted to touch on was how much wine do you need? So like I mentioned, you're going to have Kiddush twice. So depending on the size of your Kiddush cup, you may need more or less wine. And also if you're going to be drinking the wine that you use for Kiddush during the meal just as a drink. So for us, our Kiddush cup is the minimum requirement. So it's a little bit on the smaller side. And from 1 bottle of wine, we can fill that 4 times. So for us, if we don't drink the wine during the meal and we only use it for Kiddush, we can get 4 cups of wine out of 1 bottle. So like I said, depending on if you are drinking the wine or if your Kiddush cup is larger, you may need additional bottles to even make the 4 cups. And if you're not sure, I would just recommend getting at least 2 bottles for the 2 Kiddushes and the meal and the Havdalah. So we talked about wine. And now we're going to talk about challah. So challah is the special Sabbath bread that we Jews eat on the Shabbat. That we eat for Shabbat, and by halacha we need to have 2 loaves on the table for each meal. So actually by the Ben Ish Chai, which we follow, this book, he writes that you're supposed to have 12 loaves on the table at each meal, but I'm still working up to that, and I'm sticking with 2 at the moment. So what that means is you're gonna have 2 on the table for Friday night, and then you may or may not eat both of them. So if you only eat 1, you're gonna have 1 left to be used at the second meal. If you only eat 1 challah for each meal, then you are only gonna need 4 larger challah, and then I like to do smaller ones for the Motzei Shabbat meal. So it's 4 large ones and then 2 small ones, so 6 in total. But if you have guests or if you're eating both challah at each meal, you're gonna need 2, 4, 6, 8 to make it to have enough for the whole Shabbat and all the meals. So it does depend a little bit on your individual situation. and whether or not you're having guests, etc. A bonus tip when it comes to challah is to always have some extra on hand. For example, you never know, your husband might, like mine, enjoy bringing guests home, and sometimes unexpectedly he will leave by himself to go to services on Shabbat morning, but then he will come back with guests. So you just want to have extra on hand so you're prepared in case that happens, and so you can feel confident hosting extra people and you have enough challah to give to your guests. And now we're going to talk about fish. There is many reasons why we eat fish on Shabbat. Everybody eats fish on Shabbat, and it is right in the halacha that fish should be served at every meal. The main thing with fish is you want to make sure that it is kosher, as always. Fortunately, there are many different varieties, different species of fish that are kosher, and I will put a link in the description box below if you want to learn more about what fish are kosher. But basically any fish that has both fins and scales are going to be considered kosher. So salmon is a very popular choice, trout, as well as very many different varieties of whitefish, herring. Those are all kosher, and a lot of them can be found nowadays with actual hechshers on them, so you know for sure. For me, I actually like to go and buy like a whole salmon from, there's a store that here in our area that sells it, and I will cut it myself and make portions and freeze it and use that as needed. But yeah, salmon is a very popular choice. I like to do salmon. I love salmon. I know some people will do two different kinds also. I don't tend to do this. I usually just do one type of fish, and then I will serve it at the Friday night meal as well as the Shabbat afternoon meal. And then for the Shabbat morning meal, I will do smoked salmon or a tuna salad or something else like that. That's more of a breakfast type food. But yeah, the main thing is that you are having some kind of a fish at every meal. So when it comes to the cooked dish that we serve on Shabbat, as you know, we don't do any cooking on Shabbat, so all the cooking has to happen ahead of time, but it is actually a mitzvah to have hot food that we serve on Shabbat. So what we do, and I think what most Jewish families that I know do, we have either a hot plate or a crock pot or a blech, which is a big piece of aluminum, a sheet of aluminum that they put right on their stove and leave a burner or two on low, so they can put food on this to heat up. It can only be solid food, that's something to note. It can't be a liquid. You cannot reheat liquids on Shabbat, so that's just something I wanted to point out. However, if it's a solid, there's no problem. Liquids, you can still serve it on Shabbat as long as it was kept hot the entire time. So I'll put a link in the description box below again for more information. You can go and read more on that topic. It is quite complex, so I'm just trying to give you the basics here. So definitely, if you want more information, go and check that out. What we have ourselves is a hot plate, and that is on a timer. So I plug that in before Shabbat begins, and as the timer turns, as time goes by, the timer will click on and turn the hot plate on at specific times during the day when I want to heat up the food, and then I'm able to heat the dishes that I have pre-cooked on our hot plate. Lots of families, maybe you're familiar with the term cholent or chamin. We are Sephardic, so we use the term chamin, but it's basically a dish of cooked meat, and it can have beans or different grains. It can be kind of like a stew. My mother-in-law is a fabulous cook, and she always does one that's like a big piece of meat with pieces of corn on the cob in it with beans and barley, and it's just so good. But yeah, so this is something that would cook in a crock pot overnight. So we would put everything on Friday to cook, and then it's actually mostly cooked already by Friday night, and then as it cooks overnight, by Saturday it's just so delicious. That's kind of like the traditional dish of Shabbat, is this overnight cooked dish that is traditionally made with meat, but I want to point out that it doesn't have to be with meat. If you're vegetarian, you can totally make it vegetarian or vegan with no meat. It doesn't have to have meat in it. Although because meat was traditionally considered a delicacy and it was very expensive, this is why we would save our meat consumption for Shabbat. But nowadays that's all changed and your main cooked dish doesn't have to be meat. So I keep all of my Shabbat appliances in a cupboard above the fridge. So this is the hot plate that we have. I have a crock pot as well as the hot water heater. And this is what I use every week for heating up water and food and stuff like that. I just wanted to show you, this is the Shabbat timer that I use. This is where it obviously plugs into the GFCI, the outlet on the wall. This switch lets you control whether you want it to be controlled by the timer or if you just want it to be on all the time, you would switch it to outlet. I have it on timer. You can plug in your device, for example, your hot plate here or your lights, and you have 2 spots which to do that. You can see here it has 24 hours on the face, and then these little pins, you just press it down for when you want the hot plate to turn on. So here on this darker portion you have the nighttime, and then this is the daytime. So this would be 7 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 10, etc. and so on. So what I do before Shabbat, I just turn it to whatever time it is at the time that I'm plugging it in. So Shabbat starts at around 8 p.m. these days, so I would just turn the arrow to point to the 8, and then you can see the hot plate is off at this point in time. It won't come on until the time gets to 9 o'clock. So that's the time that I want it to come on. So I plug it in at the 8, and then at the 9 it will come on. I would highly recommend picking up a few of these to use them around your house. It just makes Shabbat a lot more easier and enjoyable. It can control the lights, it can control fans or something like that if you want it for overnight. So the final thing that I wanted to share with you is my Shabbat menu. So here's the Shabbat menu that I had for last week. So I just put the date here. Then I have these different sections: salads and dips, fish, soup, mains and sides, and then dessert. And then down here I just have if I'm having guests. So last week we had 2 for Friday night dinner and 1 on Shabbat afternoon. And then I just have these little questions to prompt me if I have enough challah, yes or no. Do I have enough wine, yes or no. And then any notes that I want to make a note of. So I have to buy potatoes. So for my salads and dips, last week I did hummus, tahina, matbucha, baba ganoush, and schug. Schug is like a really delicious hot spice, like a condiment. Very popular in Israel. We love it. Chickpea salad and green salad for like the bigger main salads. These salads, we call them salads, but it's actually more like dips. So down here for the mains and sides, I have roast chicken with potatoes, carrot kugel, and a roasted zucchini. For the fish, we had honey garlic salmon and then smoked salmon for the Shabbat morning meal. I didn't make any soup this week because it is the summertime and my family is not that crazy about soup in general on Shabbat, so I did not make any soup. For dessert, we had tahini cake and whatever fruit is on sale or in season. I like to take advantage of that. So I hope this video has been helpful to you and helped to answer some of the questions that you may have about what we do on Shabbat, the kind of foods that we eat. And let me know if you have any questions. Put it in the comments box below. I do try to answer any comments or questions that I get. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.